So good morning to all. So in the previous class, we discussed about neurological manifestations of syphilis. So today we are going to discuss about the common neurological emergency. So that is coma. So coma is a common problem routinely seen in the emergency department. There are various stages of coma. So coma is nothing but loss of consciousness from mild altered alertness to the confusion, delirium, somnolence, abstinence, stupor, and coma. So coma is a severe loss of consciousness. So coming to routine manifestations of drowsiness, stupor, and coma. So drowsiness is it looks like a light sleep, and usually it is familiar to all persons. And drowsiness is characterized by easy arousal and the persistence of alertness for brief periods. So that is about drowsiness. So initial stage of loss of consciousness. And the stupor is nothing but a higher degree of arousability, and the patient can be transiently awakened by making some vigorous stimuli, like by applying pressure over the eyes or over the chest region. And coming to severe form of loss of consciousness, that is coma. So coma is defined as a deep sleep-like state from which the patient usually cannot be aroused, and is it is a prolonged loss of consciousness. Usually coma is usually we should suspect when there is Glasgow around the 8 or less than 8 coma. So before going to discuss about the what are the various causes of coma, how to diagnose coma, how to differentiate from other clinical diagnosis, and how to treat the coma, we will discuss about there are certain conditions which simulate the coma, that is called pseudocoma. The conditions which simulate coma are there are four conditions: vegetative state, akinetic mutism, locked in state, and failure. So these are all majority of the manifestations are usually confused with this coma. So we will briefly discuss about the causes of pseudocoma. Number one is vegetative state. So vegetative state is also known as awake coma because it is an awake non-responsive state. In this condition, usually the eyelids will open and gives the appearance of wakefulness, but the respiratory and autonomic functions are usually retained in vegetative state, and some manifestations like yawning, coughing, swallowing, and the movements of limbs and head are usually persist. And if you apply some pressure or external, usually there will be some responses to the external and internal environment. And usually this is caused by extensive damage in both cerebral hemispheres. And most common causes for this vegetative state are uh, cerebral hypoperfusion, especially after cardiac arrest, and sometimes it may also seen in head injuries after head injuries. So that is about vegetative state. So another pseudocoma is akinetic mutism. So this is also a partially or fully awake state, and mainly caused by damage to the medial thalamic nuclei or the frontal lobes of the cerebral hemisphere. Sometimes it may be also seen in extreme hydrocephalus cases. So another one is locked in state. It is another type of pseudocoma. An awake patient without any production of speech or movement of the limbs, and there will be some retaining of voluntary vertical eye movements and lid elevation. And majority of the locked in state is caused by infection or hemorrhage in the ventral pons because of transection of descending motor pathways like the corticospinal and the corticobulbar pathways. So another form of pseudocoma is catatonia. It is a hypomobile and mute syndrome, and it occurs as a part of major psychosis, usually schizophrenia or major depression, and there will be only a voluntary or responsive movements, and but blinking and swallowing is possible in this condition, and usually it's superficially similar to the akinetic mutism, but there will there is no evidence, any clinical evidence of cerebral damage like Babinski sign and hypertonism limbs are usually absent in catatonia. So this slide is showing a fixed and sustained position that is resistant to change. So that's why it is called as a waxy flexibility. So that is about conditions simulating the coma, pseudocoma. So then we will discuss about what is the common causes for coma. Before going to discuss about causes and treatment of coma, I will give some brief description about the anatomy and physiology of the coma. So normally alertness can be diminished because of two conditions. Number one is because of abnormalities in both cerebral hemispheres, and another one under by reduced activity of the reticular activating system, also known as thalamocortical alert system. So diminished alertness is due to either abnormalities of the cerebral hemispheres or reduced activity of the reticular activating system. So this slide is showing brainstem reticular activating system with connections to the cerebral hemispheres and thalamus. So the proper functioning of the reticular activating system, its ascending projections to the cortex and the cortex itself are required to maintain the alertness and the thought process. So this slide is showing different pathways like ascending the reticular activating system and descending reticular activating system. So ascending reticular activating system is mainly helpful to the state of alertness and consciousness. Like descending reticular activating system usually controls the respiratory and cardiac rhythms and also other vital functions with the help of with the connections to the autonomic nervous system. So coming to what are the common pathways for coma? Coma is most probably present in any one of the following three ways. So either it is a as a predictable progression of an underlying illness, or as an unpredictable event in a patient with a previously known disease, or it can be as a total unexpected event. So coming to classification and the differential diagnosis of coma. So mainly it is divided into three types. Number one is coma without focal neurological deficit with normal brainstem functions and normal CT scan or MRI brain with normal CSF analysis. So this is the most common type of coma, and majority of this type of coma usually if you recognize in the early stage and treat in the with the appropriate time, usually they will respond fully and without any bad prognosis. So coma without focal neurological deficit with normal brainstem functions and normal CT scan or CSF analysis. So conditions mainly due to some exogenous intoxicants like alcohol or alcohol poisoning or barbiturate poisoning or opiate poisoning may result in coma without any focal neurological defect and with normal brainstem functions and normal CT or CSF analysis. And conditions like endogenous metabolic disturbances like anaxia, diabetic ketoacidosis, uremic failure, hepatic failure, hyponatremia or hypernatremia, hypoglycemia, prolonged nutritional deficiency may also produce coma without any focal neurological deficit. So this is the most common type of coma and with good prognosis. And some severe systemic infections like pneumonia, peritonitis, septicemia, and typhoid fever may also produces this type of coma. And circulatory collapse like seizures, hypothermia, hyperthermia, and concussion injuries to the head may also cause uh, without any coma without any focal neurological deficit with the normal brainstem function. Second type of coma is coma with meningeal irritation and abnormal CSF without any focal or cerebral brainstem signs. And if you see the CT or MRI brain, majority of the cases usually CT or MRI will be normal or abnormal. So coma with meningeal irritation with abnormal CSF. So majority of the causes in this group is subarachnoid hemorrhage, acute bacterial meningitis, and viral meningoencephalitis and neoplastic meningitis. So all these conditions may cause coma with any meningeal irritation, predominantly meningeal irritation with abnormal CSF analysis. So third type of coma is coma with focal brainstem or lateralizing cerebral signs with or without CSF changes and abnormal CT or MRI brain. So conditions producing this type of coma is massive cerebral infarcts, intracerebral hemorrhage, and brainstem infarctions, abscess in the brain, subdural empyema, herpes encephalitis. So all these cases can cause coma with focal brainstem or lateralizing cerebral signs with or without CSF changes with abnormal radiological evidences. Sometimes coma may be caused by some cerebral mass lesions and herniations. So because of this pressure over the normal cerebral parenchymal tissue, so patients may land up in coma. So normal cranial cavity is separated into compartments by infoldings of the dura. So the two cerebral hemispheres are separated by the falx cerebri, and the anterior and posterior fossa are divided by the tentorium cerebelli. So what is herniation of brain tissue? So herniation refers to displacement of brain tissue into a compartment that it normally does not occupy. So there are four types of cerebral herniations. Number one is transtentorial cerebral herniation or uncal herniation. This is the most common type. And second one is transtentorial or central herniation. Third one is transpalpal. Fourth one is foraminal. So this slide is showing four types of cerebral herniation. A is transtentorial or uncal herniation. So B is transtentorial or central herniation. C is transpalpal. 4 is foraminal. So the most common herniations are from the supratentorial to the infratentorial compartments through the tentorial opening. So number one, uncal herniation, uncal transtentorial herniation, because of impaction of the anterior medial temporal gyrus into the tentorial opening, just anterior to and adjacent to the midbrain. Because of this herniation of brain tissue, usually it compresses the third cranial nerve and produces ipsilateral enlargement of the pupil, and it also compresses the parahippocampal gyrus and results in coma. So another herniations like central transtentorial herniations, transpalpal herniation, and foraminal calcifications are mainly causes coma. And coming to another type of coma, that is due to metabolic disorders. This is the most common type of hernia. Usually we are seen in the regular emergency departments. So these metabolic disorders can cause coma by two ways. Number one is it can interrupt the delivery of energy substrate to neuronal tissue and causes the neuronal damage and results in development of coma. So mainly because of hypoxia, ischemia, hypoglycemia. So there is a destruction of the neuronal tissue because of degree interruption of delivery of energy. And next way of causing coma is by altering the neuronal excitability, like during alcohol intoxication and drug poisoning, or during anesthesia and epilepsy. So they will develop coma by altering the neuronal excitability. So as you know very well, cerebral neurons are fully dependent on cerebral blood flow and the delivery of oxygen and glucose. So cerebral neurons require continuous supply of oxygen and glucose. Suppose if there is any interruption of oxygen and glucose supply to the neurons, they will suffer from hypoxia and infarction. So brain stores of glucose provide continuous supply of energy for up to 2 minutes after the interruption of the blood flow. And like that, there is Disruption of oxygen, cessation of blood flow results in oxygen stores. It will last for 8 to 10 seconds of oxygen stores in the brain. So after 8 to 10 seconds, they will land up in hypoxia and results in development of coma. Suppose if both hypoxia and ischemia is there, it will result in a rapid exhaustion of glucose and results in neuroglycopenia and neuronal damage. So because of these, usually the easy rhythm becomes diffusely slowed, and finally, if the patient is continuously suffering from the hypoxia and the hypoglycemia, the brain electrical activity will cease. So that is about coma due to metabolic disorders. And coming to next coma is epileptic coma. So coma is also seen in epilepsy, that is called a post-ictal state, epileptic coma, and it is a self-limited coma, usually appears after a seizure episode. So it is a post-ictal state, and why this type of epileptic coma occurs? It's mainly due to because of exhaustion of energy reserves or because of some production of local toxic molecules results in development of epileptic coma. Coming to another form of coma, that is toxic or drug-induced coma. So many of the drugs and toxins can depress the nervous system and produces coma by affecting both the brainstem nuclei and the cerebral cortex. So overdose of drugs like with atropine actions usually gives some important signs like dilated pupils, tachycardia, and dry skin. So with the help of all these things, we could suspect overdose of any drugs. Like that, overdose of opiates also produces the important sign, that is pinpoint pupils less than 1 millimeter diameter. So any patient with a pinpoint pupil less than 1 millimeter with a coma, we should rule out opiate overdose. So these are all the common classification and causes and differential diagnosis of coma. Next, coming to how to approach a patient with coma. Suppose if any patient with a coma, if you approach a patient with a coma, then you stabilize the patient with how is the airway and how you should stabilize the airway and you should maintain the blood pressure. Suppose if the patient is hypotensive, then you should give some IV fluids. So first you stabilize the uh, airway and the blood pressure, then assess the severity and nature of the coma, and then assess the neurological function and uh, assess the vital signs, and if there is any possibility, you do endoscopy and examine for nuchal rigidity, because presence of nuchal rigidity is an important clue for meningitis. And if possible, take a detailed history from the family members or observers, because history is a very important clue for the diagnosis of coma, and the cause of coma is immediately uh, evident in many of the cases if you take a good history, like any history of trauma or cardiac arrest or ingestion of any drugs before the onset of trauma will uh, give some clues to the diagnosis. And you should also take some important points which are helpful in the formation of diagnosis. You should assess the circumstances and the rapidity of neurological symptom development. And you should also ask about the any antecedent symptoms like confusion, dizziness, any weakness of one limb or one side of the body, or any seizures, headache or vomiting, or is there any history of fever or double vision. So all these are useful in localizing a lesion. And you should also ask about detailed history about the what are the drugs he is taking, and if there is any illicit drug abuse or alcohol intoxication. And you should also ask about any comorbid conditions like any CKD or hepatic failure, cardiac failure patient. So coming to general examination of a patient with coma, suppose if there is any suggestion of fever, so that usually gives some clues. So The coma may be due to any systemic infection like pneumonia or peritonitis, or it may be due to neurological meningitis, bacterial or meningitis or encephalitis, or sometimes fever with the coma may be also produced by heat stroke or neuroleptic malignant syndromes. Suppose if a patient with coma is found hypothermia, so it, coma is due to alcohol intoxication or barbiturate poisoning and hypoglycemia, and we should also suspect peripheral circulatory failure or extreme hypothyroidism may be possible with hypothermia with coma. Suppose if a patient with a coma presents with a tachypnea, that indicates the cause for coma may be a systemic acidosis or pneumonia. Suppose if there is any evidence of marked hypertension in a patient with a coma, so that suggests usually it may be due to hypertensive encephalopathy or any cerebral hemorrhage or head injury. Usually cerebral hemorrhage or head injury will confirmed by taking careful history. Suppose if there is any hypotension in a patient with coma, so that may be due to alcohol or barbiturate intoxication or any internal hemorrhage, or it should also rule out myocardial infarction. And sepsis is also one of the differential diagnoses for hypotension with coma. And the profound hypothyroidism and Addison's crisis also we should not rule out. Coming to diagnosis. So fundus examination is very helpful for making a diagnosis for coma. And suppose if there is any subarachnoid hemorrhage, it is revealed by subhyaloid hemorrhages in fundoscopy. And if the cause for coma is due to hypertensive encephalopathy, you will recognize the fundus findings like exudates or hemorrhages or vessel crossing changes and papilledema. And papilledema itself is a feature of raised ICT. And there will be some clues over the general examination that helps in the diagnosis of coma. So like cutaneous petechiae all over the body or lower limbs usually suggest any meningococcial infections or thrombocytopenic purpura or any bleeding diathesis. Suppose if the patient with coma has an evidence of cyanosis or a reddish or anemic skin discoloration, so that indicates an underlying systemic disease or carbon monoxide poisoning. So after the general examination, we should come to the neurological examination. So usually the neurological examination should be carried out very carefully because uh, crossing the legs and yawning, swallowing, and coughing usually it reflects a drowsy state of the patient. And suppose if there is any lack of restless movements on one side of the body, so that is maybe most probably to hemiplegia, and intermittent twitching movements of a foot or finger or facial muscles, then you should suspect seizures. And position of the patient whenever you are seeing the patient with coma, the position of the patient will give some clues to the diagnosis, like a decorticate posture or decerebrate posture. So decorticate posture is flexion of the elbows and the wrists with the supination of the arms. Usually, the presence of decorticate posture suggests there will be a bilateral damage to the midbrain. Like decerebrate posture is characterized by extension of the elbows and wrist with the pronation. So this indicates damage to the motor tracts in the midbrain or caudal diencephalon. Then assess the brainstem reflexes. The brainstem reflexes that are conveniently examined are: number one is pupillary size and reaction to the light. Number two is spontaneous and elicited eye movements, and corneal responses, and respiratory pattern. So all uh, these are called brainstem reflexes. Suppose if there is any abnormality or absence of brainstem reflexes, so that indicates brainstem death, brain death. So coming to number pupillary signs of brainstem function. Number one is pupillary signs. So pupillary reactions are examined with a bright diffuse light, and There are various abnormalities of pupillary signs. Number one is reactive and round pupils, that is 2.5 to 5 millimeters. So that excludes the midbrain damage. Suppose if the pupils are enlarged and poorly reactive to light, more than 6 millimeters in size, that signifies compression or stretching of the third cranial nerve from the effects of a cerebral mass above. Suppose if the pupil is oval and slightly eccentric, so that is a sign of early midbrain nerve compression. And pupils bilaterally dilated and unreactive pupil, then that indicates a severe midbrain damage. So these are the common pupillary abnormalities. So reactive and round pupils usually exposed midbrain damage, and enlarged and poorly reactive pupil may be due to compression or stretching of the third nerve from a cerebral mass above, and a oval and slightly eccentric pupil is a sign of early midbrain third nerve compression. Dilated and unreactive bilateral pupils indicate severe midbrain damage. So coming to next reflex of brainstem, ocular movements. So while seeing the patient with the coma, you should examine the ocular movements by elevating the lids. You observe the resting position of the eyeballs and how the globe is moving spontaneously. And you should also test the lid tone while lifting the eyelids, and note the resistance to opening and the speed of closure of eyelids. Suppose if there is any conjugate horizontal ocular deviation to one side, that indicates damage to the pons on the opposite side. Uh, Alternately, to frontal lobe on the same side. So conjugate horizontal ocular deviation to one side indicates damage to the pons, opposite frontal lobe on same side. So the eyes look towards a hemispheric lesion and away from a brainstem lesion. So that is one clue for localization of lesion. The eyes look toward a hemispheric lesion, and in the brainstem lesion, usually eyes away from brainstem lesion. So coming to next brainstem reflex, that is oculocephalic reflexes. So this is illustrated by moving the head from side to side or vertically and observe the eye movements in the direction opposite to the head movement. So that is called a doll's eye reflex. Doll's eye reflex is a reflex elevation of the eyelids with flexion of the neck, either vertically or side to side. So normally it is suppressed in the awake patient. Uh, Presence of Dahl's eye reflex indicates there is a reduced cortical influence on the brainstem, and it indicates that coma is caused by a lesion or dysfunction in the cerebral hemisphere. Any absence of this Dahl's eye reflex indicates there will be damage within the brainstem. So oculocephalic reflexes are usually, that is a Dahl's eye reflex uh, that indicates damage in the brainstem. Coming to another brainstem sign, like respiratory patterns. Whenever you are seeing the patient with a coma, you observe the respiratory pattern. There are so many different patterns of respiratory patterns. So suppose if the respiratory patterns is shallow, slow, and regular breathing, then you should suspect cause of coma may be metabolic or drug poisoning. Suppose if respiratory pattern is giant strokes respiration, you should suspect bihemispheric damage. Suppose if the respiratory pattern is a Kussmaul's type of breathing, you should suspect metabolic acidosis. Coming to another brainstem sign, there is oculovestibular response. So this is also known as thermal or caloric stimulation of the vestibular apparatus. Usually it provides a more intense stimulus for the oculocephalic reflex, and the test is performed by irrigating the external artery canal with cool and hot water. So the result is a tonic deviation of both eyes to the side of cold water irrigation and the nystagmus in the opposite direction. So there is a synonym: cows, cold water opposite and warm water same side. The loss of induced conjugate ocular movements indicates the brainstem damage. So, so this slide is showing procedure of caloric reflex test. It is a test of the vestibulo-ocular reflex that involves irrigating the cold or warm water into the external artery canal. And usually the eyes should move conjugately in the direction opposite to the cold irrigation and same side to the warm irrigation. So an abnormal response, that is absent or asymmetric changes, usually indicates a brainstem disease. Another reflex sign, brainstem sign, is corneal reflex. So by touching the cornea with a wisp of cotton, usually we will observe a bilateral closure of the lid, and the corneal reflex usually depends upon the integrity of pontine pathways between the fifth and seventh cranial nerves. So it is a useful test for pontine function. So coming to diagnosis of a patient with coma. So usually coma is diagnosed by simple investigations, like by doing simple investigation like chemical analysis of blood and urine, and by doing cranial CT scan or MRI scan and EEG with the help of a series of examination and arterial blood analysis. Usually we will diagnose the majority of the cases, and with the help of serum electrolytes and glucose measurement, and measurement of calcium, osmolarity, and the renal function test, and ammonium test, and toxicological analysis usually reveals the majority of the cause of coma. So then coming to treatment of coma. So the aim of treatment of coma is, first we should prevent the further nervous system damage. So for this, we should correct that rapidly. Suppose if the patient is having hypotension or hypoglycemia, hypercalcemia, or hypaxia, hypercapnia, hyperthermia, we should correct all these things immediately. And by making this, we will prevent the further nervous system damage and improves the consciousness of the patient. And oropharyngeal airway should be adequate. Suppose if there is an abnormality, you should go for tracheal intubation. If you are suspecting any hypoxia or any obstruction in the pharynx, you should go for tracheal intubation. So there are certain indications for tracheal intubation, like apnea or upper airway obstruction, or if there is any hypoventilation, or if the patient is persistently vomiting, or if the patient is uh, going to aspirate, then we have to go for tracheal intubation, and IV line is procured. And if you are suspecting narcotic overdose is a cause of coma, you should give naloxone. Or if you are suspecting hypoglycemia is the cause for coma, then you should infuse the dextrose very fastly. And thiamine is given along with the glucose to avoid any vernix encephalopathy in alcoholic patients. And suppose if you are suspecting any basilar thrombosis in brainstem ischemia, you should give thrombolytic agents by excluding the cerebral hemorrhage. And physiostigmine may be needed in patients with anticholinergic type of overdose. And suppose if the patient is hypotensive, then you should give some hypotonic intravenous solutions. While giving hypotonic intravenous solutions, you should be carefully monitored, and because it can exacerbate the brain swelling. And while intubating, you should also rule out any cervical spine injuries. And suppose if the patient with coma is if you are suspecting meningitis or meningoencephalitis, and if, we should give we should do urgent lumbar puncture and examination of CSF to diagnose the exact cause of meningitis. Suppose if the lumbar puncture is delayed because of non-cooperative of the patient, then we should immediately give empirical antibiotic therapy like third generation cephalosporin with recyclovir with appropriate blood cultures. So after confirmation, then we have to treat according to the cause. Suppose if the cause for coma is a head injury or any, then we should treat primary incident. Then suppose if the cause for coma is meningoencephalitis, then we should continue the antibiotics or antivirals according to that. So coming to prognosis of coma patients. So in patients with children and young adults, the prognosis is usually good. And coma due to metabolic causes, the prognosis will be good. In case of prolonged vegetative states, the prognosis will be bad. So that is about coma definition. What are the different causes for coma, classification of coma, and the different diagnosis of coma, and how to approach a patient with coma, then how to diagnose a patient with coma, and treatment and prognosis. So in the next class, we will discuss about cranial nerve disorders like fifth cranial nerve, seventh cranial nerve, trigeminal neuralgia, Bell's palsy. So in the next class, we will discuss about Bell's palsy and trigeminal neuralgia.